Hello, Attorney Lee Marvin here today explaining or demystifying the process for green cards for a family member, okay? There's a lot of confusing terms and descriptions used for some of these processes that really don't need to be that confusing. It's just maybe it makes certain people seem smarter. But basically there's the CR1 and the IR1. They're basically the same exact process. The only difference is what you get at the end of the process. So a CR1 is a conditional residency one. I don't know what the one means. Or the IR1 is the immigrant relative process. The process is exactly the same. The cost exactly the same. The only difference is whether at the end of the day, when your spouse enters the United States, do they have to remove their conditions in a couple of years or not? That's the only difference. So, first of all, what are the processing times for these? It still varies quite a bit, okay? Because depending on where you live and where you file to start the process, can have a drastically different time frame compared to another, okay? Usually, so USCIS is always the first part of the process. It's the family petition part. So you're filing for your spouse. You got to file the initial petition, which is the I-130 family petition for alien relative. You file that with USCIS, who processes that based on where you live, okay? Once that's processed and approved, everything goes to the National Visa Center, NVC. The National Visa Center is the office within the State Department that handles the requests for people who want some sort of visa to enter the United States. The processing times for those are pretty consistent, okay? So right now, if you are a U.S. citizen sponsoring a family member or a spouse, it's about 13 to 15 months to process this request because of where your case is handled in the United States. Once you get sent to the National Visa Center and the embassy, it usually can take about, it's all over the place. It usually takes only a few months, but sometimes it can take 9 months to a year. For example, if you're in Ciudad Juarez in Mexico, it's taken a lot longer to process those requests because there's a heck of a lot more people in Ciudad Juarez who are going through this process. So it's not exact, but there is a big gap between the different processing centers. I'll say U.S. citizens versus legal permanent residents. It is slightly quicker for U.S. citizens versus legal permanent residents, which is about 17 to 30 months if your sponsor is a legal permanent resident. So 13 to 15 or 17 to 33. When you're dealing with that amount of time, it really doesn't matter a whole lot. I know your family member wants to get here and you want your family member here, but honestly, a few months when you're talking about a bureaucratic process through the government is not a huge difference between a U.S. citizen and a legal resident. Most people are a little bit surprised by that. I get people coming to me saying, "Hey, I was told to wait until I was a citizen before I filed for my spouse." No. There's not that big of a difference. So I always tell people, file for the process as soon as you are legally able to file and just track it, monitor it, and do what you need to make sure that you're not delaying the process because the government takes as long as they take anyway. So don't worry too much about that. So processing times, again, it depends on where your office is in the United States for the first part of the process. And then overseas, it can vary a little bit, but generally the National Visa Center processes things about the same. And scheduling for the interview in your embassy overseas, that could be very different too, depending on how busy the embassy is. Okay, so fees. It's about $1,500 US, $1,500. What does that break down? The family petition, aka the I-130, petition for alien relative is $535. So your sponsor, U.S. citizen or legal permanent resident, is filing that application for the government to review, to vet the relationship. Okay, that's what the I-130 process is. That fee is $535. Not a big fee. I mean, it's all money, but $535 is not too bad, okay? After that is processed and approved, and it gets sent to the National Visa Center, the National Visa Center charges two different fees. $325, which is their fee for processing all this documentation and sending it to the embassy, $325. There's a $125 processing fee for them to review and to vet the affidavit of support or the financial sponsorship part of that request, okay? Then, after you go through to your interview at the embassy and you enter the United States with your temporary green card, you then have to pay a $220 fee to get the hard credit card style green card, okay? $220. On top of that are the medical exams as well. Depending on where you are, that's anywhere between $200 and $600 or $800. I've heard of ridiculously expensive processing for these, but that comes down to what country you're in and what they happen to charge down there. The money is always paid in local currency. When you're talking about medical exams, local currency, you're going to a facility that the U.S. Embassy in your country has approved to do these exams, to then forward to the embassy for the approval or the review of embassy staff, okay? So it really can vary. Usually it's paid in local currency, as I said, but compared to U.S. dollars, usually it's between $200 and $600, okay? What are the eligibility requirements for one of these visas? Basically, green card process overseas. We call it consular processing, okay? Basically, you need to show certain things. Obviously, the vetting process of your family members, the I-130 petition for alien relative, that's already done, and there's a bunch of documents that get sent with that, but they ask for them again. So you got to make sure that you're providing all that information. Whether you're already approved or not, the State Department is different than the Department of Homeland Security. So they have their own process, and they ask for a lot of the same stuff. The good thing is you already have it. So you just have to make sure you assemble it and provide it to the National Visa Center at the appropriate time, okay? But basically, what is that? Financial support application, a.k.a. the affidavit of support, a.k.a. the I-864. That document is what the immigration needs to look through to make sure that you have the financial support to move to the United States and not become a public charge. Public charge, naughty, naughty. A public charge is somebody who relies on the taxpayer or the public for sustenance or for support. We don't like that here. If you are going to come to the United States, you better be self-sufficient. But until you can figure out how to do that, meaning until you have the right to work, you need a financial supporter. Your financial supporter is always your immigrant sponsor. That immigrant sponsor isn't always able to do it with the resources they have. So sometimes they need to call in a favor from a family or a friend to become a co-sponsor, okay? It happens a lot. But that application is what is needed for the government to officially recognize and review and make the determination of whether the immigrant is able to come to the United States and not be a public charge, okay? Support documents with that affidavit of support basically are income, tax, and or asset information. The sponsor has to prove that they are a U.S. citizen or legal permanent resident, okay? And they also have to prove that they have domicile in the United States. What is domicile? You live in the United States. So just because you're a U.S. citizen, that's not enough. You also have to show that you are you are living in the United States, you are contributing to the economy of the United States. That's just as important as it is for the sponsorship, the immigrant sponsorship information. You've got to show that you meet those criteria, okay? Let's see. The National Visa Center and the embassy require certain documents they call civil documents. So financial is one, civil documents is two. You have to provide all that information so they can vet you for your green card. Again, a lot of this information is the same for the I-130 process, but there are some differences. So what are those? Well, similarities first. Basically, birth certificates of the sponsor and the beneficiary, marriage certificate if you're already married, which you have to be for this process, divorce documents, police certificates, okay? Police certificates are basically proof that you are not a criminal in your home country. The United States government is not going to let you into the United States if you are a convicted felon or whatever the equivalent is in your country, or if you're wanted by the police. If you've got serious legal trouble in your country, you're not going to be able to come to the United States with a green card, okay? So they make you get those documents, which are incredibly difficult sometimes to figure out where to go to get these. The National Visa Center and the embassy has information to nudge you in the right direction. So as you're going through this process, if you have an attorney like me, I'll figure it out for you. Otherwise, you got to read the fine print and figure out where to go to get that police certificate. Similar to a police certificate are basically court documents, judicial documents that show that you are not in trouble, okay? Sometimes they're the same thing, other times they're not. It just depends on your country, okay? Military records. Sometimes they ask for military records because they want to know if you've served in a military that's friendly to the United States or in opposition to the United States. Pretty important, okay? So if you have those documents and if they're applicable to you, you got to provide those. A valid and current passport for the immigrant. You got to show that you have the legal right to enter the United States and that you have the ability to get a passport, because that says something. If you don't have the ability to get a passport from your government, either you didn't care enough to try to get one, or you've got legal trouble that prevents you from having one. The United States doesn't want anything to do with that. So make sure you're looking into that ahead of time so you're not caught when you get your interview scheduled and you don't have these important documents, okay? Medical exam. This is always a big stressor for people, okay? I already mentioned the pricing can vary quite a bit, but it's needed for everyone who's trying to come to the United States, okay? The United States, the law says you have to be eligible and not what we call inadmissible. Inadmissible means you're not permitted to come to the United States. One way to be inadmissible is to have medical issues. For the most part, we're talking social diseases. Tuberculosis is an example. COVID almost became an example of that, but since everybody had the problems, it really didn't arise to that, even though back when COVID was a thing, which was not too long ago, the government required proof of vaccination and things like that, but those communicable diseases, that's another way of referring to these sorts of medical problems. You have to go through the medical exam to prove to the United States government that you don't have something that you're going to bring from your country. Tuberculosis is another example, that you're bringing to this country that's going to create an epidemic in the United States, okay? Highly important, okay? Very specific instructions and requirements on how to get that, where to get that, okay? So pay close attention to that. And of course, you've got your embassy applications. So the National Visa Center, technically the embassy doesn't do it. But there's an application for the embassy, which is done through the National Visa Center, which is your DS-260. The DS-160 is the condensed version of that, which is usually for people for tourist visas. So the 260 is the long one that asks your history all the way from when you were 16 years old. So if you're older, it sometimes is difficult. They ask everything from jobs to addresses. Lots of stuff goes in this application. That is required. Usually that's required before anything. You pay the fees and you do that application, and everything else follows that. Very detailed, very specific instructions on this part of the process. Again, it doesn't matter if you're getting a green card for your spouse or if it technically is a family member. This really is the same process. It's just whether they call it the CR1, IR1, but all the stuff I'm telling you can apply for anyone who's trying to get a green card through the consular offices, which is the counterpart to adjustment of status, which is inside the United States. So hopefully demystifies it for you guys. We have a lot of videos about both of these processes, but I wanted to do this quick video because there's so much confusion, so much confusion over basic terms that the government doesn't clarify, right? They want you to go to an attorney to get clarification. Well, hopefully you just got it. We do a lot of these, so call us. We'd love to help you with your process. We're very good at them, okay? Also, subscribe to us on our YouTube channel, our other social media outlets. We do a lot of these videos because we find it's extremely helpful in people moving forward with their life and planning. This is all about planning, either coming in to meet with your loved one or to be reunited. It's very important for you to know how the system works. If you have suggestions, drop them down below, and we'd love to do more clarifying videos for people. If we have several video requests, clearly there's a lot of people out there that are confused by this stuff. We try to do the best we can to educate people, whether they're our clients or not. We want everyone to know how this works because we want everyone to be able to come to the United States and be with their loved ones. Give us a call. Check us out online. And if you want an appointment, if you want us to do your process, all you have to do is contact us. Have a wonderful day.